My name is Jodi Lyons, and I'm your host of Your Need to Know. You can find me at www.senior-sherpa.com. And today we have two outstanding guests. You can find them at the www.privateaccessnetwork.com, not the. No. And it's Scott Schedler and Randy Domolky. Guys, I'm really glad you're here today.
Good to be back.
Yeah,
Great.
Thanks for having us, Jodi.
So today we're going to talk about what it means to be an entrepreneur. And I guess we should start with the real basics and then move up to the exciting parts about how an entrepreneur could be involved with Private Access Network. So first things first, what in your mind is an entrepreneur?
Well, that's a great question. I'll just give you the beginning of the answer and then I'll let Scott chime in, Jodi. Okay. But an entrepreneur is someone that has an idea that has not yet been tried, for the most part. Okay. And it may have been, but that's the way I look at it. You have an idea in your mind to do something that is not obvious, which has likely not been tried before, certainly has not been tried successfully before, for the most part, and you want to buck convention, somewhat throw caution to the wind, and pursue this idea through business, through the constructs of business.
So not building a better mousetrap, coming up with something totally different?
Well, no, it could be building a better mousetrap because history says it's actually easier to sell a better mousetrap than it is to sell a mousetrap for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, so it could be either one.
And it could be selling that mousetrap in a different way than it's been sold before.
Okay, keep going with that. So explain this a little bit.
Let's see. So let's say that mousetraps had traditionally been sold through hardware stores.
Okay.
And all of a sudden this thing called the internet comes along and I invent a website called mousetrap.com.
Okay.
And I make it easier for people to get exactly the right mousetrap for their mouse situation for the first time ever.
So that absolutely makes sense to me. Yes. That's great.
And what would happen traditionally, right, and this is kind of history repeats itself, Jodi, so you come up with that idea and in your own mind as the entrepreneur, and this is really part of the definition, you're saying, oh, this makes perfect sense. I completely see how everyone is going to change their habits from buying the mousetrap in the hardware store to buying it online. And then you pitch your spouse or your parents on that and they say, well, I don't see that at all. I don't think anyone's going to want to do that. Right. That's how you know you have a good idea. Right? Okay. Because it's not instantly, you don't instantly get the traction you need because people are loathsome sometimes to change their patterns of behavior. So many times you're going to get, pushback, you're going to get negative feedback for something that you know in your heart has huge potential and it's just a matter of time before the whole world's going to be doing it your way. If you're in a situation like that, as they say, you might be an entrepreneur.
Love it, love it. People always say the first no you get brings you one closer to the yes.
Yeah, if the bigger the idea, the more people are going to, and this is not exclusive, but in many cases, the bigger the idea, the more people are going to push back and say, why would we need that? What is wrong? My horse and carriage seem to be working fine. Why would I ever want a horseless carriage? Okay. What would we do with all the horses? And the entrepreneur says, we'll find something.
Right.
I'm sure we'll find something.
That's terrific. I love that definition.
I'm going to stress out Randy's definition just a little bit. So I would say that all what Randy says is true. I would say that this new idea has to actually solve a problem for some identifiable target customer.
Okay. So identify the problem, identify the customer, and say what you're going to do about it.
And then third, prove it.
Okay.
So Randy talked about proving it to your family and friends. Yep. Prove it to that target customer segment by actually getting customers to pay you in a way that you can make a profit from.
That makes perfect sense.
So those are entrepreneurs that Pan loves.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in entrepreneur world, we are always told that there are different ways to raise capital. Friends and family always comes first. And then there are angels and venture capital. And can you explain a little bit about who does what and where the money comes from?
I'll let you go with that.
Sure, yeah, I'll start off with that. So I always tell people, Jodi, the two best people to be the first money into your business are the people that either you know the best or that know your business the best.
Okay.
Okay? And so the people you know the best, like your friends and family, are going to say, Jodi, my gosh, you could do anything. I just love you. When we were in high school or college, you were the first one up in the morning and first one at the top of the hill when we were hiking. You could do anything. So I blindly am going to follow you into this business and I will support you with some amount of capital. The second group of people are the people that know your business the best, and ideally you've probably worked with some of those people who say, yeah, Jodi, you were pretty good worker, that's not the important part here, but I have 30 years in the business of healthcare, for example, and the paradigm you just described to me of how you're going to change the world, I know we've struggled here at big company to change, and the fact that you've figured out a way to do it, to actually do it, I know you're going to win. Right?
Okay.
And then ideally, you get someone who's a combination of both. They know you really well, and they know your industry really well. And these are the first people that you're going to get some of your seed capital from to write a business plan, build a prototype, make a website, just do the base level layer of stuff you would need to start a company.
Okay, that's great. So that's the friends and family. What's a venture angel?
Well, and two different things.
And am I using the right word? Okay,
not,
so there you go.
Not exactly. So,
Good, okay.
although they do overlap, so that's
Okay.
fair. So, an angel investor is more likely to invest at what they call the seed round. So, the seed is obviously a biological metaphor for how early stage a company is. So, typically at the seed round, an angel investor will be investing in a company that has not yet proven that thing that I was talking about before, that they can actually generate revenue, much less generate it at a profit.
Okay.
So oftentimes these are ideas or prototypes or models that are waiting somebody's investment, an angel investor, to help prove out the fact that they can actually get customers.
Okay.
Venture investors invest at a variety of stages, but typically later, after the company has proven out its model to some extent, and they just need to throw more gas on the fire, typically in a bigger way. Typically, angel investors are in, I'd say, the six-figure range.
Okay.
And the venture investors tend to be in the upper seven-figure and eight and even nine-figure range in terms of investing. So it's later stage.
Okay. And you guys are with Private Access Network.
Yeah.
So where would Private Access Network fit in with what we were just talking about?
Right. So we would fit in the overlap, if your listeners could imagine a Venn diagram, Jodi, in the overlap between the later stage angel investing and the earlier stage venture investing and the medium stage venture investing. So the angel investors many times, again, may know your business and they want to help you get kind of off the ground. Scott and I are looking at so many deals and are just, cannot be specialists in any one particular industry. So we need actual business metrics to be able to analyze to determine if you meet our criteria. So our questions are questions like, how fast are you growing? And if a company says, well, we're not growing at all because we're still working out the kinks of our prototype and our first go-to-market product, we say, great. Give us the presentation, give us the demo. We want to know what your market opportunity is, but we can't really invest until you've got some measurable business traction that we can examine and analyze versus the other companies that also have measurable business traction. So that's the stage that we're getting in with the check. But we want to meet you and get to know you when you're at the seed and angel stage, because that's the best kind of due diligence that we can do, where someone makes a projection or a promise to us, and then they keep it.
Right.
That's really the ideal situation for us. And so that's the stage that PAN is investing in. And we are building for our members, and of course ourselves, because we're always investors in our own deals, a portfolio of companies that are in business, that are growing, almost every month or quarter. I mean, some have seasonality and lulls in their business, but essentially they're growing every quarter. And so the bet we're making is you can continue to grow. You can go from being kind of a fly on the back of some of these large companies to, more like a cat or a dog or a saber-toothed tiger that you're eventually becoming.
I like that.
I really like that too.
Yeah, you're eventually becoming quite a threat to these companies, and they say, what would you guys think if we just bought all your stock and gave you cushy jobs at big XYZ company?
To make you stop
being a saber-toothed tiger. Stop being so difficult. We're having to explain who you guys are and run ads that counter your ads, and it's really getting expensive. And so, what if you just came to work for us?
I like that. Yeah. So are there other types of investors, like public? I think you had mentioned earlier,
public?
Scott. So
Randy, you've got a little bit more experience than I do with private equity, but that's even a more mature stage than venture. But there is private investing that's called private equity.
Sure. Well, let me mention something specific, Jodi. So I mentioned that the people that know your industry the best would be great seed investors for your company. So a corollary to that is what the industry calls strategic investors. And this would be a corporation that's already in your business that may not be particularly innovative on their own. They may not even have an R&D budget, but you would pitch them on a product idea that's in their business, and they would say, you know what, instead of having to pay $1 billion for you later, why don't we invest now when you're small, because we're smart enough to realize that what you're doing has a high probability of ultimately being a threat to us. Why don't we give you some money? And why don't we own 10, 20, 30% of your company and actually help you? And then when you're successful, we'll already have an equity stake in the company and we'll have got in on the ground floor as opposed to having to buy in when you're already successful.
So a company could be the strategic investor too.
And what I would tell entrepreneurs out there is just really quickly get to the answer of, do you as a company, someone in your industry, make strategic investments in startups? Because if it's the first time, that's going to be a tough sell.
Okay.
But if they've already realized their own, weaknesses and inadequacies and said, hey, we'd love to back, 5 or 10 emerging companies, then that's a great conversation to have.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like great advice. Are there particular industries that are more likely to have that kind of company?
Yes.
Okay.
Software.
Okay.
Yeah. Software would be the most likely industry, and the other one would be what I'll call light industrial and industrial. So the Gs of the world and the Intels of the world, and even the GMs of the world, they say, we're really good at building technology and manufacturing at scale.
Okay.
Thousands and hundreds of thousands of units, and maybe even millions in the case of Intel. What we're not good at is we're not always good at is hatching new ideas and getting them from, what I call nothing to something. I mean, literally from a kernel of an idea to a small business. What we call a small or even a medium-sized business, these big behemoths call nothing. I mean,
right,
they literally
not
say,
even a mosquito.
Yeah, we don't even know who you are at all. So that's what's exciting for them, is to say, this is our future, and instead of home growing our future, we'll partner with entrepreneurs who really are doing what we can.
I love it. So we're going to take a break right now. If you need more information, go to privateaccessnetwork.com. And of course, if you need to find me, www.senior-sherpa.com. We'll be right back.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Jodi Lyons, and I am here with my guests from Private Access Network. I'm really thrilled you guys are here. So we were talking before the break about what an entrepreneur needs to know about different kinds of funding and things like that. So now let's get to the nitty-gritty and the really tough questions. Sorry to put you guys on the spot. What makes a good pitch? So let's say an entrepreneur says, I have the best idea, and we followed your advice, and we know what's right. What next?
Sure, absolutely. So this is one of the hardest things that entrepreneurs need to do, Jodi. And first let me say they should do a lot of homework and a lot of practice before they actually come and pitch us, because we really want to see a mostly polished product.
Okay.
We don't want them to hold back on what the challenges are that they faced, but we want it to be concise and articulate and really cut to the chase of why this is such a good business idea. And that's what we want to see, and I think Scott mentioned it before too. It doesn't have to be so intuitively obvious that it's a good idea, but you should be able to convince us through research, interviews, proof, the initial traction that you have, that what you are doing actually can add a lot of value to a lot of people. And so the best pitches are short, are concise, and are pitched against a backdrop that might just be the first 30 seconds of the meeting, where someone says, you know how the Beltway is cluttered with millions of cars at rush hour? And you say, yes, no, exactly, I know. Do you solve that, right? And the best pitch says, yes. Well, let me show you our hovercraft that works, allows 5 levels of traffic on the Beltway, right? And so what you don't want is someone who says, yes, the Beltway traffic, and then they say, no, well, I invented, a soft drink. Well, I don't get it.
Unrelated. They should make a connection.
Right. So set me up where I'm going, yes, I know this is a problem. Do you know how expensive college is and that barely anyone can afford it? Yes. Do you solve that? And you want to hear, yes, we do. We either invented something and we have a patent on it potentially, or we have a trade secret, or I worked 20 years in a particular industry and I came up with this with my old boss, or I'm young and inexperienced, but I just happened to come up with this amazing idea while I was, hiking in the mountains or whatever it is. And so then we get really excited, and Scott will tell you we have a million questions after that, but big market opportunity and customer pain, whether that be an individual or a company, and great solution to address that issue.
Perfect. And so, Scott, Randy set you up there and said you'd have a million different questions next.
Well, I know you said you're putting us on the spot. This is the spot of what we're doing. So,
Okay.
So this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is what we're excited to be doing pretty much every day.
Okay. That's
and,
great.
And so, you asked what the entrepreneurs need to be thinking about. We actually make it pretty easy for them.
Okay.
And if they or our investors want to see how we invest, they can go to privateaccessnetwork.com and we actually have a tab called Investment Process.
Oh, that would be explaining things.
Yes. So there are 5 things that we look at.
Okay.
Large market opportunity,
Okay.
skilled, candid leaders who have a real sympathy for the problems of their target customers, as we were talking about before. A credible plan, both in terms of their business model and their growth strategies, to hit an exciting objective in the progress towards that large market opportunity. Business traction, typically manifested by paying customers.
Okay.
And finally, a really excellent team. And I left one out.
The exit landscape.
Oh, the exit landscape.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of people leave that one out. Pan doesn't leave that one out.
Okay.
So a lot of people forget to think about the fact that we're putting our money in, and it's critically important that we can figure out how we're going to get it out, either typically through an acquisition or sometimes an initial public offering or an IPO, as we talked about before.
So I'd love to talk a little more about that, because one of the things I've heard in the entrepreneur community is, well, this is my baby and I never want to give it up.
That happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So clearly that would seem to me to be antithetical to investors who would like to succeed and then IPO, exit, acquisition, et cetera. So can you talk to me a little bit more about how you address that challenge with a reluctant entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think you need to have a very honest conversation about that,
Okay.
and establish that psychological contract before you hand over the money. So and again, Randy and I are putting our own money into every deal. We're only picking the deals where we think the probability of dramatic success outweighs the possibility of failure, right? And so you have, if we can never get our money back, that's a failure.
Well, that becomes a donation, not an investment.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we would still own a chunk of the company in theory. Let's say that there's a profitable kind of lifestyle business that was going on. We would still own something. But if we can't figure out how to unlock that value, that's not the kind of deal that we want to be in. So it's critical that we look each other in the eye, have the handshake, and say, we're putting this money in so we can get it out at some point. And in many of our deals, we actually establish some sort of a mechanism to make sure that we're legally protected, so that there is at least some way that can happen.
That sounds like a great way to address it. I'm sorry, Randy, what were you going to say?
You may hear, some of your viewers may be familiar with the term, and I apologize if it sounds like a buzzword, alignment of interests, right?
Yes.
We want our interests to be aligned, and we're not going to force you to align interests, but if we deal saying, yeah, we'd really like to make 3 to 5 times our money in 3 to 5 years, we want the entrepreneur to say, yes, me too. Can you help me also make 3 to 5 in 3 to 5 years? That's what we call alignment of interest. And if someone says, well, I want to make it in 6 years, we say that's fine, that's close enough. But to your point, if someone says, no, I want to pass this business on to my kids, well then, you may have a fantastic business opportunity, but it's not consistent with what Scott and I want for ourselves, with our own investment objectives, and it's not what we've explained to our members that they're going to potentially get out of pan. So we would say to that person, look, we think you're great, we think your business is great, but we have this contract with our members, and it's perhaps more formal than it would even be with these companies, that we are going to get them a multiple of their money in less than 10 years, if your company's successful. And again, the entrepreneurs that we're all working with have said, great, no, I want the same thing.
Right. I mean, that makes sense to me too, but
well, I mean,
everyone's
different.
I've heard it from other places, right?
So this concept of
different.
alignment of interest, and going back to advice that we would give to entrepreneurs, is choose your investors carefully as well. You want your investors to be the kind of people that have the same goals for your company as and have that alignment as what you're hoping to achieve.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, if you two could talk for a second about what most people call elevator pitch.
Sure.
And that does not mean, as I understand, that you hit the emergency button and stop the elevator. But what do you think is a good elevator pitch? What do you want to hear?
Yeah, so this is a good one. I'll start, Scott. First of all, again, short. You've heard the quote that, I would have written you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one instead, right? And it's the same thing with the elevator pitch.
Yes.
Some people think, I got to cram everything into a 60-second pitch.
Yes.
You don't. If you could tell me in 2 or 3 words, right? Plastics, for example, right? Just tell me in a sentence why this is such a good idea, right? So, all the traffic on the Beltway? Yes, I've invented the hovercraft. Okay. I'm already interested.
You understand what it is.
Yeah, you took 10 seconds of my time.
Yep.
Because the purpose of the elevator pitch is not to close me on the investment, it's to get to the next meeting. Okay, we're going to have 8 or 10 meetings with you. So all you want to do is get to meeting number 2, which should get you to meeting number 3, which should get you to meeting number 4. And so the process with us, for the most part, Jodi, is quick, succinct, exciting elevator pitch that gets you to a meeting where we would ask you to broaden your pitch, right? So tell me more about that in a broad sense. And then we would go narrowly down a bunch of silos and say, you know what, let's just spend an hour on sales or marketing or product strategy or partnerships or team. Who are you going to hire? Let's go in a bunch of silos. And then from our point of view, we put everything back together at the end and say, okay, well now we've had hours and hours of your pitch, essentially. Does this meet the bar for what we consider a great investment for the PAN members?
I like that.
Can I try one?
Go for it.
All right. This is going to be a fill in the blanks.
Okay.
What do you call it? Categories or something like that? Jodi?
Oh,
Mad
Mad
Libs.
Libs.
Mad Libs. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm going to do Mad Libs. Okay, so my company provides this solution for this target customer. My revenue is this. I'm growing at X% a quarter, and my customer lifetime value is 8 times my customer acquisition cost.
Love it. And that's perfectly succinct. So for everybody here who's listening, you just got phenomenal free advice on how to do a good pitch. So I really appreciate that, because obviously I'm sitting here with 2 experts. So that's wonderful. And we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
One of the things I want to ask, because we have the expertise sitting here, what is the entrepreneur fail? What's the easiest way to turn investors off? The pitfall and the mistake everybody should avoid.
So this is, you're going to hear multiple answers for this, Jodi.
Okay.
But essentially, the biggest mistake I think you can make is pretend that you know more than you do, or that it's going to be easier than it really is. And you might call it humility, you might call it reasonableness, but essentially what I don't like to hear is this Herculean task which you're going to take on. And that doesn't matter if you're doing it for the first time or the 10th time, but this Herculean task that you're going to take on, that you somehow make light of it, or think it's easy, or think you've figured out all the facts and figures that you need to figure out. If you come across like that, it's game over, essentially. And so that's the biggest mistake someone can make, is thinking that it's about just blowing me away with your confidence, as opposed to blowing me away with your knowledge and your openness to the fact that you may not know everything.
That makes sense. And Scott, what about for you?
I think two other mistakes.
Okay.
One is thinking about your business in a way that's bigger than you need to think about it right now, such that you're trying to do too many things all at the same time. Particularly, and this is the second thing, not having enough capital. So you need to constrain your vision based on the size of the resources that you have. And ultimately, strategic focus is a very important way that Randy and I judge entrepreneurs. It's not only what they say they're going to do, it's what they say they're not going to do, at least for now. The tough strategic decisions, and Steve Jobs said this, the toughest, the decisions I like the most at Apple were the things that we decided not to do. Right? So the tough calls. And so we like to see those guys that make tough calls and use their resources wisely.
Perfect. That is outstanding advice. I am absolutely thrilled that you guys were here today. So we have Randy Domolky and Scott Schedler from Private Access Network, and your website. You can find them at www.privateaccessnetwork.com. And you can always find me at www.senior-sherpa.com. Thanks again for joining us. Guys, glad you were here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jodi.